Hello everybody, good morning. I am Ravindra Dastikop and I will be teaching you the course Innovation and Design Thinking this semester. This design thinking course is very fundamental because as a part of your career in engineering, you will be required to design either a product or a service or a device all through your life. So the fundamental things that you learn about design thinking in this course will form a foundation for your career. A good understanding of design thinking will actually help you to take your career to different heights. This course, Innovation and Design Thinking, has the following course objectives. It will try to explain the concept of design thinking for product and services development. See, as a part of your career, you may be involved in designing a software or a hardware or a devices like printer, other things. Also, you are like augmented reality, lenses, cameras, other things. So these fundamentals will help you to understand the requirements and actually develop them. And it also tries to explain the fundamental concept of innovation and design thinking. So innovation is the process where actually you come up with new ideas for product and services, and applied with the design thinking, it will help you to come out with a product which are affordable by large community of customers. It will also discuss the methods of implementing design thinking in real world. For example, tomorrow you are designing a software. This design thinking fundamental will tell you how to go about that and how to successfully develop that product. Similarly, if you are developing a new device, maybe a 3D diagram, 3D product, then actually this course fundamentals will help you to design that product much effectively and much successfully. Innovation and Design Thinking is a one credit course. That means we will be having one class every week throughout the semester. And here is the syllabus which is given for us by the university. The course Innovation and Design Thinking is divided into 5 modules. Module number 1 will talk about shared model in team-based design. See, today much of the industry work has become a team-based one where actually a group of people will be working. So this chapter or this module will look into the shared model in team-based design, meaning how people share the work and develop a particular product or a service. And they will also talk about theory and practice in design thinking, explore presentation signers across the globe, MVP or prototyping. So in business today, there is an idea called minimal value viable product. So that is studied in the module number 1. Thereafter, in the module number 2, real-time design interaction capture and analysis, where actually, see, there are occasions where actually you will be designing product in the real time. For example, if you are developing a website like for a company like Google and other things, now there is no time for you to develop this in another isolated area, silos area, and actually you apply. You need to do it on the real-time analysis. That's exactly what is done here, enabling different collaboration in the digital space. So, for example, there is a idea called DevOps, where actually developers and operation people are get connected. So that is covered in the module number 2. Empathy for design. This is a concept where actually customer comes first and designer will come next. Collaboration in distributed design. What it actually means is, suppose you are developing a product where actually needs collaboration. For example, you are developing a software for a hardware like a camera and all. Then you need to collaborate with people who are from different teams. In the module 3, we'll be talking about design thinking to business process modeling. So business is a process. That means starting from the production to final marketing, it has many phases. And this is converted into a process. And today in software, there is something called agile development and virtual collaboration. So there may be a team actually which has team members from different countries. One may be from India, one from America, one from Korea and one from Japan. So now they all actually collaborate using a virtual platforms like online. So this is also considered in this. And next, actually, the module number 4, we will be talking about growth. Okay, then what it actually means is, how do you see your future of your company and actually how you change according to the demands. For example, very recently, probably you know that actually we have seen a new product called ChatGPT. So this actually has revolutionized the way people can access data and access information and resources. This has become a kind of a challenge for an existing leader in the search space called Google. Okay, now we'll be talking about this. Okay, and finally, you should be looking at the environment and actually make more sense out of whatever noise that you are getting. That is covered in this module number 4. And in the module number 5, we will be talking about design thinking workshop. Once that we have all the fundamentals covered in these 4 modules, then we will be trying to conduct a workshop where you will be applying all these principles into a particular product or a service. Once you complete the course, this is what is expected as the outcome of the course. Upon the successful completion of this course, students will be able to understand the following things. Okay, objective number 1, appreciate the various design process procedure. That means how does design thinking process works. Then generate and develop design ideas through different techniques. There are a couple of different approaches for developing an idea and a product and a service that you will be appreciating them. Identify the significance of reverse engineering to understand the product. What it actually means is, whenever you want to compete with another company, what normally people do is actually they take an existing product, they disassemble it and try to understand what the competition has done. So that is called reverse engineering, that you will also study. And draw technical drawing for design ideas. That means now if you actually have product idea, then you are actually conveying that through a design. And now this is actually based on what we call Bloom's taxonomy, and you will be trying to understand everything at this level, K1 and K2. That means remember and recognize the concept and select an explanation statement related to a particular question. That means your level is actually at understanding and applying at a practical level. In this module number 1, we will try to understand the basic ideas of design thinking, its process, its elements, its path and other applications. Design thinking is not a property of designers. It is not that only designers use design thinking. Everybody at every stage of their life they can use it. All the great inventors of engineering, science, literature, art, music and business have used it in the past. It is only in the recent years that engineers have started using that. Design thinking supports the developing, teaching, learning and applying strategies to solve complication in a creative manner in the projects and processes of the business. As you know today, business is one of the fundamental social activity or the social phenomenon. People actually start business to produce products and services. But in the complicated world today, it is very difficult to figure out what can be made and what can be sold and what can be produced. Since this is a very complicated post, design thinking will actually give you a framework where actually you can use elements of design thinking to organize your thinking about how to design a product and finally get into the hands of a customer. Now that we have a broad idea of what is design thinking, let us give some kind of a formal definition to design thinking. Design thinking is a term used to denote a set of strategic, conceptual and practical processes in which design concepts are developed, like products, proposals, structures, equipment and communications. So for example, product would mean a new car or a new software, the thing. Proposal, structures meant like a new building or new kind of a bridge, those things. Equipment in a hardware industry. Communication, for example, new mobile device or new kind of a communication network. All these actually are come under this. So it is actually used to denote a set of strategic and conceptual. That means you should make a strategic decision. That means I should go for this market. For example, sometime back actually Reliance entered the mobile with their Jio products. So that's called a strategic decision. Conceptual means how do you understand that. For example, Jio has taken their mobile application or mobile offer into a bigger thing. Now they have Jio Films also. Jio Films. That means they are connecting one product to another one. Okay, and they are creating an ecosystem. And practical processes, that means how do you actually connect that whole process into an end user. For example, when you went actually and bought a Jio SIM, they actually used a kind of a Aadhaar based authentication system for KYC. They did not ask you Xerox copy of your PAN card, Aadhaar card and all. So that kind of a consideration is called practical process. Many key concepts and aspects of design thinking have been identified through studies across different design fields, design concepts and design work in both laboratory and environmental context. So this design thinking has been developed for quite some time, quite decades, and now they seem to have aggregated the best principles from best practices and they have designed a formal discipline called design thinking. Design considerations are also linked to establishment of products and services within the business and social environment. See what is good, what is not good for the environment. For example, until now we have been using a lot of petrol and diesel vehicles. Now we have realized that that has a huge impact on the environment. Now design thinking has actually helped people to come out with an alternative called electronic vehicle. So essentially design thinking will help you to design and develop products which are environmental friendly, sustainable, economical, viable, and so. Although the discipline design thinking has picked up and become a mass movement across the industry and business, the idea of design thinking has a long history. So let us just take a brief look at what actually happened before we started using design thinking. So design thinking process in timeline. In the 1960s, attempts were made to make design scientific. Until then, actually, it was thought that design is something an artistic work where actually an individual or a great person or a great artist actually design. But then they said, okay, there must be a process where actually you can teach design process to anybody. To make it possible, they designed something called design scientific. That means there is a science. In science, actually, there are basic principles, basic elements, basic interactions, and do. So in the 1960s, this was done. And at the same time, actually, we use the term wicked problems. Wicked problem means for the first time in the 1960s and 70s, we started having problems which are much, much bigger, which cannot be solved by one company, one industry, or one nation, or one government. Okay, so for that actually they call this wicked problems because they are much bigger than what are the traditional problems. So in the 1970s, well, actually they were attempting to solve these problems. The principles of design thinking started to emerge. That means there was element, the embryonic stage of that one. So then actually in 1980s, solution-focused problem solving was observed. So earlier people thought that every problem is generic and it needs a general solution. But then they realized, like in medicine, every disease is different and every medical condition is different. So they started making a solution based. That means we will actually decide on a solution and then work out that problem. Then in 1987, design thinking was compared to architecture. See, for example, whenever you build a new building or a bridge and all, it is not the engineering that comes first. Before that, actually, there is an architecture. So architecture will decide certain things about that particular building. For example, it will actually decide what is the purpose of. So for example, if you are developing an airport or a port or a seaport, then there are architecture that would happen before you actually start building. So people started comparing design thinking to architecture. That means even before you start thinking, you must design your thinking. And then in the 1991, actually, IDEO brings design thinking into mainstream. So this was a company which helped companies like Apple to design many of their iPhones and other things. So in 1992, Richard Bunsen published an article called Wicked Problems in Design Thinking, and this was actually a fundamental. That means now they realize that we have some bigger problems and they can be solved scientifically using design thinking. So in 2004, he founded actually D School. This was actually in the United States, Stanford. So this was the first attempt to formalize and convert the design thinking into a formal science and start teaching in an education institute. Now let us understand it in a wider context. The methods and concepts of design thinking, although promoted by developing companies and design consultants ranging from wide range of fields including software development, engineering, anthropology, psychology, art and business, they is not limited to only them. Okay, it is a wider science. It's like physics. Every physical thing in the world will actually use physics, whether it's a medical application or an engineer application. Design ideas as they exist today have evolved collaboratively. That means since 1950s, they have been evolved collaboratively. That means different disciplines like physics, chemistry, engineering, politics, medicine, they all work together over a period of time and then they have developed some kind of a discipline today. These have been integrated, documented and promoted by leading design firms such as IDEO and Frog and education institutions like Stanford University and have been increasingly accepted by the industry. While these evolutionary and experimental design have led to the methods process in the form of design thinking and tools and methods. The summary is actually design thinking did not happen all of a sudden in one day. So there is a history in this. So collaborations among across disciplines like architecture, then engineering, then science, then other disciplines actually have happened in the last 50 years and that actually led to the creation of this science and now this has become a formal science which is currently taught in many schools and many colleges. Now let us consider some milestones in the origins of design thinking. In the year 1963, the idea of using design as a way of solving complex problems in a simplified manner in sciences originated in the book called The Science of Artificial, authored by Herbert Simon. So he was the first person who said that artificial things can be created. For example, that actually has led to what we call artificial intelligence today. Robots are also artificial human beings and other things. Okay. In 1973, the idea of design was achieved by design engineering by a book called Experiences in Visual Thinking, authored by Robert McKin. So he took it to a different domain and different discipline. In 1982, design methodology is defined by Cross, uh, the study of principles, practices, and procedures. Design as developed and included in the study of how designer work and think. So design again is not only limited to engineering. It is there in every discipline. For example, medical there is a design. In technology there is a design. There is a design in architecture. Okay. Now they actually made a cross. That means it is a multidisciplinary idea that was brought in 1982. 1987, Peter Rose titled a book called Design Thinking, describes the methods and approaches that planners, designers, and architects use. So it could be a civil planner, it could be a city planner, or it could be a national planner. Okay, they will be using this. In the 1980s to 90s, the work of Robert McKin was consolidated by another person called Rob Fate of Stanford University. During this period, 1991, David Kelly founded IDEO. IDEO was actually, I told you, a company which was specialized to designing, and they helped many companies including Apple and other companies to come out with their very fantastic products. The developments in design thinking continued in the 90s and 2000 also. In 2009, the design thinking process itself is a human-centered, offering methods for inspiration, ideation, and learning and to designers. So then in the 2009, they extended so that actually they can accommodate other stakeholders like customers and other things. And in 2012, apply the study of design thinking principle to engineering. So for the first time, engineering started adopting the design thinking in their products and services. In 2015, verbal protocol analysis, cognitive ethnography, controlled laboratory experiments, and other formal methods from cognitive science have been rigorously applied in engineering. So now actually there are many different things that people will look at and do. For example, when you design a screen, it is not just engineering, it's also ergonomics. That means you should be able to comfortably see that your eye should not be strained. So this kind of a thing also started entering into the design process. In 2007, design thinking reflected in many applications like prototyping, solution-based method, often useful way to encourage inspiration, ideation, organization learning, and human-centered methods. What it actually means is earlier people used to just product from an engineering or a physical perspective, but now there are multidisciplinary considerations you have to do. For example, whether it is comfortable for an end user to use this, whether if he is some kind of a physically handicapped, how will you accommodate that handicappedness in this? So it's now become a multidisciplinary design process, and all these are accommodated by what we call design thinking. Now let us understand the principle of design thinking. Design thinking is about how to think and act as it is about process. That means design thinking is a thinking process, action process, and also process. That means how do you connect a starting point to the end point, that's called process. Aside from the process, design thinking is also about thinking where the concept can be thought as an integrated set of beliefs and attitudes. For example, you should trust in the concept before you actually start implementing. And this is also the hacks in beliefs and attitude. That means the person who is using design thinking should trust in its concept. For example, if you are engineer, then you should believe in the engineering process, the science behind it, the implementation. So the first element about the principle of design thinking is human focused design thinking. That means you look at the person who will be using that and then you start implementing. The process that understands from the perspective of the human, including the employees and customers. That means you don't design because you are interested in that, but you are designing because the end user, a human beings, will be using that. So some of the other principles associated with design thinking include diversity to work in a team. So today we know that products are becoming global, and now you need to understand every need of every person across the globe. To understand this, it cannot be possible for one person to study and understand. He need one easy way is to include members from each of these sections and to be in your team and seek their advice or their opinions. For example, if you are developing a product for pan-India application, then you should include people from Hindi people, Hindi states, from Tamil, South Indian states and all. So this will give you a kind of a balanced view so that you can design a product which can be applicable to entire India. Then the second thing that you should be doing is the solution should be very comprehensive. It should not be a kind of a piecemeal approach. That means it will work for South Indians now, or it will work for children now and it will work for another group later, or it will work for men now and it will work for women later. That kind of a thing will not happen, and that should not be good. And because now that you have a diversity and a comprehensiveness in your approach, your communication skills be good. For example, earlier I told you most of the projects today actually use virtual teams, so members could be from different countries. And communicating when you are differ in your culture, languages, location, and countries is a big challenge. That is also a part of your design principle. Now that we have understood some basic things about design thinking, then we will look at how do we get into the design thinking, and this is actually mentioned in terms of stages. Design thinking model proposed by Hasso Plattner Institute of Design at Stanford University. As I told you in earlier history of design, actually this is the institution which formalized the design thinking as a discipline. D School is a leading university when it comes to teaching design thinking. The 5 stages of design thinking according to the D School are empathy, explain, ideate, prototype, and assessment. Look here, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So this is a broad process where actually it starts with empathy. Empathy is a process where actually you consider the requirement of a customer or a other person who is going to be the user and then integrate into your system. Explain, actually then you define a problem to solve that challenge, and then ideate is a process where you generate different ideas to meet that particular requirement. Then you develop a small product, okay, in a small scale, that's called prototype, and then you assess whether this prototype actually meets all the requirement of your product or end product. The first stage in design thinking is called empathy. So the first step in design process is to gain critical understanding of the problem that you are trying to solve. So unless you understand the problem, you cannot solve it. So it's a very critical step. This involves consulting with experts to find out more about the area of concerns, to consult and empathize with people, understand their experiences and motives, and to immerse themselves in a visible environment to gain deeper personal understanding of the issues. For example, if you are trying to solve the problems in ATM, then you should be visiting ATM, sitting there, looking at the customers who are withdrawing money and then understand. Similarly, if you are trying to solve a problem of a driver in BRTS, then actually you'll be traveling with him and try to understand problem. Then you should be sensitive enough to understand. For example, there are different cultural issues and also the gender issues. For example, there are problems that men don't understand about women. Similarly, there are certain issues which women don't understand about the men. Similarly, there are problems which old age people, which problem we don't understand as a young people. Vice versa. Similarly, children problem we may not understand. So sensitivity is the ability to recognize this fact and put your effort to understand problem. And depending on the time limit, then you, depending on how fast the problem is to be solved, then you are looking at the next phase. That means you are developing. That means see the world, okay, then appreciate them as human beings, then communicate your understanding, understand their feelings. This is the first part of your design process. Now that you have understood the problem using your empathy, then it is the turn of defining the problem. So what does actually happen this stage? During the define problem, you combine the information that you have created and collected during the empathy phase. That means you have talked to experts, you talk to the users, you have talked to the people who will be trying your products and services. This is where you will analyze what you have put in together and explain the core values that you identified so far. That means what is the issue, what is the to be solved. Is it a physical problem, it's a mental problem, it is a discomfort, whatever that you do actually. So revisit the unknown, align your knowledge. That means what you know and what you don't know, you just figure it out. Distill research finding into artifacts. That means once you identify, then convert into artifacts. For example, how do you solve a problem in a in the ATM? Then start to tell a story. That means you convert this into a story that people will understand what the problem is and how do you come out with a solution. And generate a solution state and collaboratively. That means all team members should be sitting and they will be trying to solve that problem. Record everything in the whole process. That means definition is important, because once you define, you are actually committing to that definition so that nobody will have any confusion on what they are trying to achieve. The third stage is actually ideate. Now that you have understood the problem and defined that, then you should generate a couple of ideas to solve this problem, and that is called ideation. Ideation is a process of actually looking at the problem and trying to figure out different angles from which it can be solved. So you will have multiple ideas, you may have hundreds of ideas and all. This whole process actually is called ideation. So now since you know everything, the problem and also the definition, and you will be solving this very directly or very attentively. The next stage is actually prototyping. That means now that you have figured out three things, you understood the problem, you have defined it, and you have produced a couple of ideas, then you have to choose one of the ideas and then you actually develop a particular solution. That small solution that you develop, that means with minimum features to test, is called a prototype. So this is actually a regular practice in everything. For example, if you want to develop a word processor, then you start with a text editor. Okay, that means that's the prototype will start. And they use another word called MVP, that is minimum viable product. So you start with a minimum viable product, give it to the market, they will start using that. Then depending on the feedback that you give, make changes or add features and go on. Okay, so keep in the mind, user in the mind, plan the scope of the testing and take the action and fail fast. That means conduct as many experiments as possible. Choose the right tools and fidelity and record questions for the testing. That means once you know what are the features to be tested that you are be looking at. So once the prototype, that means a small version of your product is created, you need to test it. Okay, so designers or testers firmly test the complete product using the best solutions identified during the simulation process. And this is the final stage of 5-phase model, starting with empathy, okay, then define, then then ideate, then prototype and testing. Okay, and even this phase changes and improvements are made to solve the problems and gain as much as insight into the product. That means something is a kind of a beta version where you are testing with some people or even minimum number of people, and what will actually happen is revisit the goals and scope. That means you go back to your definition and figure it out whether you are testing all the features we are listed there. Identify whom to test with. For example, if you develop a product for a handicapped person or a person who needs hearing aid, then actually you will go to that person and figure it out. Consider the research logistics. So what needs to be done to test it? For example, if you have developed a solution for an ATM, then how many ATMs that you are going to choose and then do that. Or if you are finding a solution for a bus driver in BRTS, then how many trips that you want to participate or look into that. Test your solution with users and iterate and retest. That means in case there is any feedback, then actually you are integrating into your next iteration. So now we have covered the 5 stages of design thinking, which is used for designing product and services. So it starts with the empathy, understanding the customer requirement, then actually defining, then ideating, then prototyping, and finally testing. Now we will look at broad scale benefits of design thinking. So it helps you to overcome creative challenges. So what actually happens is when you are solving a problem and all, there are many things which actually prevent you to be creative. That means you are not understanding the whole problem. That's why you should have a bigger team and a diverse team, and you may not be getting all the technical support. For that reason, actually you should have every kind of a professional in your group. Okay, and it also helps you to meet customer requirements effectively, because now it involves all the process, all the stakeholders like customer and the user. Then actually you will find a solution which is better. It also helps you to increase your knowledge about design thinking. Now that you are applying design thinking, you will also understand the core principles and core practice ideas and challenges within that. So that means, for example, benefits one is applicable across industries. So if you study design thinking, is learning mathematics. You no matter in which discipline are, you can apply that. Reinforcing innovation. Since actually you are repeating your iteration, when you are iterating your process, it will actually reinforce. That means it will give a repetition which will actually makes you to believe that in more way. Strengthening the leadership, encouraging creativity, and promoting teamwork and delivering business value. This is the ultimate value. For example, why do you produce something or product or a service? Because ultimately you have to sell it to the market. So now if the customer feels there is a value in that, that is nothing to beat it. We have seen the benefits. Now we'll be looking into theories and practices of design thinking. Like any other discipline, actually there are theories and practice. That means there is some proposed and that is tested in the field and then actually finally accepted as a correct thing. Okay. Design schools scholars continue to discuss theoretical development. That means people have different perception, different proposals, different theories. And here actually we will be considering different theories. For example, now people say design science, it's a way of thinking, designingly ways and design thinking. So this has come to this. That means design thinking is actually, design science is a science, and using those principles in your thinking and practice is actually called design thinking. Now we will be considering different approaches, theories which are actually be used in the field. The first theory is called theory of thinking modes. Building on Gulfeld's studies, there are 3 basic modes of thinking: analytical, judicial and synthetic. So now how does people think? That also be considered. Some people called analytical thinking. That means they are working only very reasonably. That means they think very scientifically. They have accurate numbers and accurate decisions. They are called analytical thinking. For example, most engineers have to think analytically. Okay. Then there is judicial thinking, is a process where actually you look and take judgments based on your biases and thinking. For example, this is not good for Indians. So that is a kind of a judgment that you take. And synthetic thinking is where actually you combine this analytical thinking and judicial thinking. So similarly, there is something called divergent thinking. That means you have an idea, you go to different fields and try to find out a solution. And convergent thinking is actually you come from different disciplines and arrive at one particular solution. The next theory is called theory of problem solving. Here actually people think that there is a challenge, there is a problem to be solved, and how do we solve this? There are three types of problems. They are all analytical, judicial and synthetic. That means the previous we saw that analytical thinking and analytical problem solving uses that skill. The concept of analytical problem includes precise challenges. For example, it has to be an engineering precise challenge. For example, I want to launch a satellite from ISRO to the moon. It has to go there only. Okay. And solutions which are based on the small number of challenges and have a precise way of working on the challenge. For example, developing a mobile tower. It has a precise work to do. Judicial problems are influenced by complex challenges and which require solutions that require correct direction based on the problem statement present through a complex challenge. For example, how do you control traffic in India? So that is a big challenge. It is a vehicle problem, it is a population problem, it is an infrastructure problem and all. Synthetic solutions are actually combination of these two. So problem solving, actually you should recognize a problem and recognize the concerns, what are the limitations. For example, if you have to solve a problem, one of the concerns is actually a budget, the amount of money that you have, the amount of time that you have. The next theory is actually theory of creative blocks. See, according to this theory, there are barriers to the creativity individual, and individual expresses inability to access creativity, and hence there is a block created in the creativity process of an individual. What it means is, you need to think to develop a creative solution. But sometimes it so happens that a great creator, great thinker will find some blocks. This is true for many professions. For example, see, if you are an author and you write a book, a great book, and after that for 2-3 years you will not be able to write a book. That's an author's block, okay, writer's block. Similarly, this is true in everything, okay. Some people get burnout. So now what this theory says is, yes, creativity is needed from an individual, but there are things which will prevent him from becoming creative, and that should be considered in the whole process. Then there is a theory of creative process where actually you have to choose between the inner and outer. That means there may be your mind may be saying some solution, but the outer world may be saying something else. Conscious or unconscious, there is a lot of information in your unconscious world. Maybe 10 or 20% of what you know is known to your conscious world. So now you have to choose between them, and this actually starts with preparation and incubation. That means you understand the problem, say on Monday, and you think for a week. Incubation, and then one day in your sleep or in your dream or in your conversation you get that idea, then you verify with the real world. So the last one is actually theory of creative thinking, education and metacognitive control. What this actually means is design thinking can be taught to everybody, and for this reason actually even creativity can be taught to everybody. For example, you can have a course on a creativity, and you can teach people creativity. So earlier people thought that actually creativity is something which comes with a born. For example, if there is an a player or an artist or an actor or a singer, most people thought that actually it's a natural gift which has come out of birth. But today we believe that to a certain extent you can teach music to people. To a certain extent you can also teach creativity to people. So the next theory is practices of design thinking. What this is actually, design ideas from perspective of designers show that ideas are used for customer problems, as this is driven by organization culture. What it actually means is, design companies are interested in customers and you take the perspective of a designer. Therefore, design thinking has an impact on the culture of the organization, and therefore designers need to consider the impact of design thinking on the organization. See, some organizations don't allow some kind of a creativity. So there are cultural reasons, there are business reasons, there are other issues. Okay, now you should be looking at what is desirable, what is viable, and what is feasible, and what is lovable. That means finally which product people will accept. For example, today Apple phones are liked by across the world, whether it's in China, America, India and all. So there must be a lot of work that has gone which has made that technically efficient, effective and also aesthetically appealing. Now we'll consider team-based design thinking. What it actually means this, I told you earlier, teams are created because it can have members, and the reason why we create team because we want to include diversity. For example, if there is a man in that, there should be a woman in that. If there is an Indian in that, there should be an American in that, because products need wide diversity. And right team culture, once team is come into a being, actually it should have a culture where actually people should mingle and produce, have a good discussions and produce products. Therefore, design thinking teams need to have the right culture, that means right composition, right in developing the right direction in the team process of the design process. For example, if you are autocratic leader, then you say this is what we will do. That means others have to bend and listen to that. Whereas in democratic thing, actually everybody will put their ideas to the discussion, and finally your solution is made based on the debate and final voting. Now that we have considered different kind of design theories, we'll be looking at the features. Okay, the design thinking understands from the perspective of the customer. That's the first feature. Second, we will collect feedback from the customers once it is designed as a feedback. Expanding the range of solution. So it is not one solution, it is a spectrum of solution. Solution for this range, solution for this people, solution for this place, kind of a thing. And enable design thinkers to develop new products and services. It is not only you are solving a problem, then actually you are also extending it to another level. For example, now Apple machines and Apple phones actually come with different things. For example, in 2007, they came out with a new idea of swiping instead of actually having a keyboard on your mobile. So now they are developing into different phases. Okay. Now this uses a minimum viable product. That means start with this minimum viable product, means start with minimum features and release it to the market, and then you go on iterating your products further. So now that we have covered a first chapter or the first module in design thinking, let us summarize. So this course is about design thinking, which is a discipline which is very useful for every engineering student irrespective of branch and others. Not only engineers, it is for everybody who is involved in designing and developing products and services. When we say this designing service product, it's not only physical products or physical services. It could be a medical process, it could be an educational process. Okay, and this design thinking actually has different stages where actually it will, for the first stage, starts with understanding the problem. That means you are solving somebody's problem. You are developing a course for somebody. You are developing a service for somebody. So don't think that you are good at designing without consulting them. So first problem is actually, the first challenge is to understand the problem, and you do that. Then empathize. Don't think that your problem is their problem. You need to talk to them and understand that problem and develop that one. Okay, and then you have to define. Once you understand the problem, you have to define your solution, then generate ideas for that, then develop a small product for that, and finally test it. So the summary of this chapter is very simple. Design thinking as a discipline, that means it can be taught to anybody, and that is an integral requirement of an engineering student, and that's the reason we have included this in the course. The university has prescribed the following books for this course. Okay, there is a long list of courses, and now that it is a 1 credit course, you may not have time and energy to cover all. On behalf of you, actually we are covering. So I'm actually referring to both books, like this one and this one. So these are the two fundamental books, and much of the notes that we give through this presentation is actually from those books. So technically you don't have to read, but in case you have time, you are encouraged to read. Look at these books, and we also share you the link just after this. Now that we have come to the end of module 1, let me summarize. Design thinking is a new discipline for us. It will help you to understand the product and service challenges, and to design solutions which will be acceptable by the customers. So all stakeholders, including customers, designers, engineers, everybody, testers, are included in this process. So giving a overall picture and a comprehensive approach, you are developing the solutions which are likely to be very successful.